All right. So you slid this across the table. Like, what are you going to tell me now? You changed your mind on cigarettes?
That's what I do, man. I just change my mind on everything.
You changed like the wind.
No, I brought these as a prop because I've had them in my backpack the last few days that I've been in Los Angeles, and I'm always self-conscious. Somebody be like, what are you walking around with Marlboros for? But this is interesting. It's an illustration for people because I came across some really interesting studies on seed oils and how they're connected with cigarettes. And so the idea here is that if you look at seed oils when you cook them, when you heat them, and specifically you look at French fries, like at McDonald's or In-N-Out or any fast food joint, they're going to cook in seed oils. McDonald's French fries have 19 ingredients and they cook in 4 different types of seed oils: canola, soybean, hydrogenated soybean oil, etc. And there's been multiple studies looking at this, but one specifically looked at seed oils and the amount of toxic lipid oxidation byproducts when you make French fries out of them, right? There's 4-HNE, which is harmful for humans, but there's also acrolein and alpha-beta unsaturated aldehydes. And they looked at the amount of alpha-beta unsaturated aldehydes in 152 grams of French fries, which is a large fries from McDonald's or In-N-Out. And there's the same amount of these toxic chemicals, which are group 2A carcinogens from the WHO, that you find in 25 cigarettes. So the striking thing that I wanted to tell you is that I know you don't think this, but if someone thinks that seed oils are benign, consider the fact that eating a large fries from In-N-Out or McDonald's contains the same amount of these toxic chemicals as a pack of cigarettes.
So what was that? What was that main chemical that you said? The 4?
It's alpha-beta, 4-HNE.
Okay.
And then there's alpha-beta unsaturated aldehydes,
okay,
of which acrolein is sort of in that family.
Is that going to be specific to like McDonald's French fries, or you said In-N-Out too? Is it just like
when you cook in seed oils, you generate these lipid oxidation products at levels similar to what you find in a pack of cigarettes, similar to one serving of a large fries. And that's crazy to me. And so like fries are addictive, and just like you can't buy these unless you're 18 years old, but you can give your 3-year-old French fries at McDonald's. And we never consider the potential long-term effects of those, especially these lipid oxidation products. So I believe seed oils are harmful for humans, even if they're not cooked, because basically they're industrial waste products. You know, you look at a seed oil factory, it's an oil refinery. And they're going to oxidize the oils. They're extracting them with hexane. There's contamination with benzene. I've also talked about that if you look at seed oils across the board, there are trace amounts of benzene, a known carcinogen in seed oils, in, I believe, part per million ranges in benzene, which is crazy because you consider that Perrier water got pulled off the shelves a number of years ago for part per billion amounts of benzene, and there are part per million amounts of benzene in seed oils. All of the other problems with seed oils aside, but it's crazy to me that if people are getting seed oils, they might be getting seed oils in their salad dressing, which you're not going to cook, but a lot of people are cooking in seed oils, and a lot of the junk food that we are eating as humans is cooked in seed oils, and that is creating toxic products. Now, cigarettes are probably also super harmful because of the tar, the pesticides, and other things, and those are not in French fries. But I use this and I slid this across the table to you as an illustration of the fact that, people see this and they're like, whoa, that's bad. That's like Paul is holding a toxin in his hand, but in this hand, I could be holding a pack of, a large fries from McDonald's.
After today's video, I popped a link down below for Sundays. If you have pups, if you have dogs, I definitely recommend you check them out. It's the first ever human grade dog food. I've got 3 dogs. Maybe you don't know that about me. At one point I had 4. Big dog family here. So we really care about our dogs. And when it comes down to food, I definitely recommend you check this stuff out. So it's created by a veterinarian that was really seeking better quality food. So it's all air dried, human grade, which means if you wanted to take a bite of it yourself, I don't know if you really want to, you could. It's that good of quality. And my dogs absolutely love it. And we've got a 14-year-old dog, a 12-year-old dog, and a new pup, and they all eat it. So anyhow, I popped that link down below that'll save you some cashola on them if you want to check them out. So first line of the description, directly below this video, there's a special link and a special code for you to save some money on Sunday's dog food.
So is this, are these chemicals typically only when, these particular chemicals only when heated?
Yes.
Okay, so that's something. So is it one particular oil in specific, or is it just this particular medley, right?
Yep. That happens when you heat linoleic acid.
Interesting.
It just breaks down into these lipid oxidation products, and it's not talked about enough because they're super harmful for humans. And this is the reason that I think you have to be careful about any of the oils that you heat, because even olive oil can be problematic when you heat it. And I don't recommend that people heat olive or avocado oil. Like if you want to heat an oil, and I should also say that in the same study they found that if you heat a saturated fat, it doesn't make the same byproducts.
Yeah, well, McDonald's, was notorious. They used to cook in tallow.
They used to cook in tallow, and then
that was like their claim to fame. They were proud of that
for 50 years.
Yep.
They cooked in tallow. For 46 years, they cooked in tallow. I think it's 1944 to 1990. There was an eccentric billionaire or a millionaire named Phil Sokoloff who had a heart attack, I think in 1966, and he made it his life's work to convince McDonald's to stop cooking in tallow because he believed saturated fats were behind heart disease. He was kind of influenced by the Ansel Keys. And I think if you look at the literature now, it's pretty clear that saturated fats do not associate with heart disease in any way, shape, or form. There are free-living populations of humans like the Tokelauans and in the Polynesian atolls who have large amounts of saturated fat in their diet and elevated cholesterol by our standards today in Western medicine, and they have vanishingly low rates or zero heart disease in their population. So that's a whole separate podcast on saturated fat and heart disease, but I think Phil Sokoloff was wrong, but he had this multi-million-dollar campaign. He had these flyers smearing McDonald's, and eventually they caved to the consumer pressure. But people liked the fries so much when they were cooked in beef tallow that McDonald's now adds a beef flavor to their fries, and the beef flavor is made from milk and whey and wheat ingredients. So there's no real beef.
Almost beef. Yeah.
Yeah, but people like the flavor of tallow. Imagine that. We like animal fat historically as humans.
Are there any fast food places at all that are not cooking in seed oil?
Zero that I'm aware of.
Some company recently, I'm gonna have to think of this offline, just made a stance that they were like going to get rid of all their seed oils. But it wasn't fast food. It was like
Sweetgreens did it.
Sweetgreens is awesome.
Yeah, Sweetgreens did it. I think that,
which I love, because Sweetgreens is like a very like trendy, almost wokey kind of place, but they're like helping even this younger generation like look at food a little bit differently. Like, because you've got a lot of this young generation that's sort of like, I don't care. Like, it's just going to like, you're just trying to scare me. You're fear mongering me, whatever. But then you've got Sweetgreens that comes in, which I think is largely like geared towards not younger, but maybe like people in their 30s, because it's expensive to eat at Sweetgreens. It's not like you can't go eat there if you're 17 years old. But like, it's probably for, like there's one here in Westlake Village, like, right, where it's a more affluent area, but most of the people that I ever see there are going to be in their 30s, right? And they're people that maybe before would have been like, oh yeah, I'd go to, whatever, not worry about the seed oils, but I love that Sweetgreens is doing that. Do you know Nicholas? I've
talked to him. Yeah. He talked to me when they were doing that through the whole process. They still, I think, have seed oils in their salad dressings. They're phasing that out. They cook in olive oil now.
I just use the Chipotle cream one. So it's just sour. It's basically just sour cream with some Chipotle seasoning in it.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, that's good. That's the one sauce that you can get away with.
Chipotle still uses seed oils. Maybe they'll change. But a lot of the manufacturers, they're going to better oils. They're not cooking in tallow or butter. That would be my preference. So for a cooking fat, it's tallow or butter or ghee. The more saturated the cooking fat is, the less it's going to have these lipid oxidation products, massively different amounts. So we're talking orders of magnitude lower or non-detectable amounts of these lipid oxidation products. But I'm trying to think, there's no fast food restaurants that I'm aware of that cook in tallow. I thought there was a restaurant in Arizona that I went to that was going to do it. I'll think of the name in a second. But when we actually looked at the data, they cook in a mixture of tallow and Smashburger. They cook in a mixture of tallow and canola. So I went in because I still go to restaurants and say, what do you cook in? And most of them cook in seed oil. Some of them cook in olive, and better, but still not great. And they said, oh, we cook the fries in tallow. And I said, hell yeah, that's amazing. And then you look on the website and they cook in tallow and canola oil. So did you eat one
before you looked on the website?
No, I didn't eat it. No, I didn't eat it. But I did a piece of content recently where I challenged McDonald's that if any McDonald's restaurant in the United States cooks their fries in tallow, I will fly there and eat the fries on camera if they return to cooking.
You're gonna get
tallow.
Like one employee that's gonna go into the parking lot with like a propane heater and his own tallow that he got from down the street.
Yeah,
and he's gonna be
cooking tallow in
the parking lot. Yeah, so you make a video about it.
Yeah, but it doesn't happen, and it's tricky because McDonald's did it for decades. It's clearly doable. I think that when you cook the fries in tallow, there's like more of a smell. There's a restaurant in Costa Rica that I go to, and they've eliminated seed oils, but they used to cook the fries in tallow, and the employees complained. I don't know why.
Isn't it? Couldn't you argue? I don't know if this is true or not, so correct me if I'm wrong. But couldn't you argue that, like with tallow, you could? There's probably health department reasons why you couldn't. So I guess it's theoretical. you could reuse that quite a bit because it's not going to be going rancid, right? So you could
yeah.
I mean, you could reuse it definitely more than you could a seed oil.
I think you could. And the problem with a lot of these restaurants is I don't think they change out the fryer oil.
I think they're supposed to, but they don't.
I don't think they change it as much as they should.
Yeah, you taste it with the iced tea tanks too. They're supposed to clean and scrub those tanks. But if you get iced tea, it's
all the mold.
It's just nasty.
Oh, that's
like you can
gross.
tell when they've cleaned the tank versus when they haven't. What's your take? And I asked Sean Baker this too, and he didn't have a whole lot to say, probably because it was just maybe it was just something he wasn't that interested in. But if you took a potato and you had French fries and you cooked it in tallow, would you consider it to be that bad of a food? Because I mean, some would say, okay, well, the Randle Cycle, you've got this high amount of carbs and high amount of fats together. What's your take on the Randle Cycle? What's your take on a French fry if it's like an organic good potato that's like cooked in tallow?
I think it's not as bad as a potato cooked in seed oils. Yeah. I think that heating oils is not great. And if you're deep frying, like if I were going to make tallow fries for my friends and they were like, Paul, we have to make tallow. Okay, fine. We could fry, some potatoes in tallow. And I think it's probably not the worst thing in the world. It's not that bad, actually. The Randle Cycle is interesting to me. I think it gets misinterpreted. And there's some nuance here. And the Randle Cycle is the idea that our cells prefer to do either carbohydrate metabolism or fat metabolism. And so the hypothesis there, or the intention would be, if you eat these things together, it's going to lead to weight gain. There's a lot of N=1 anecdotes of people who disprove that theory, myself included. I eat a good amount of fat and a good amount of carbohydrates, and I eat them together all the time. And so I'm not gaining weight in terms of fat. But what's interesting about the Randle Cycle is that it's not that your whole body does this. The cells appear to have the agency to do this at a cellular level and decide whether one cell, even adjacent to another cell, wants to burn carbohydrates or wants to burn fat. So I think that for people to worry about eating fat and carbohydrates together, it's just much too granular. I wouldn't worry about it at all, because in that case, you're going to, number one, you're only going to eat carbohydrates or you're only going to eat fat. That's just not normal in our diets as Westerners. And I don't think that's anywhere near the top of the problem list for us in terms of gaining weight. That is not the reason humans are fat. Go ahead, have a steak, put butter on it, and eat an apple with it if you want to, or eat a potato with it. I don't think that's a problem for humans at all, because I think that there is this idea that our cells in our body are intelligent and they don't have to
nutrient partitioning. Yeah,
they can They don't all have to do the same thing, and you can have cells that are doing carbohydrate and fat metabolism, at different times in different places. I don't think it's a problem.
Yeah, when you look at some of the research on metabolic gridlock and like when they do occur and there's like this particular protein that elevates and is like a pretty inflammatory response, but it was in extreme amounts of fat and extreme amounts of carbohydrates in one sitting, right? And that actually triggered, it was like, I want to say it was VKR or something. I'll have to look it up. It was called like a VKR response. And it was basically, it would trigger this metabolic gridlock where essentially the mitochondria would just be like in an effort to prevent toxicity, we're shutting our doors. Like the membrane would just, so it was almost like this immune response that would happen. So I find that pretty interesting. I do think that people that are metabolically damaged subscribe to the Randle Cycle a little bit more, because it's easier for them to comprehend of saying like, okay, hey, if I'm broken, then maybe I can like isolate these nutrients a little bit better. And I know a lot of people in the ketogenic community kind of subscribe to that, because it was like, hey, my body's not necessarily recognizing carbohydrates as well. However, when you look at things, it's almost as though you just have a degree of peripheral insulin resistance at this point in time, and you're having glucose coming in, and your body's for a temporary amount of time not knowing what to do with
72 hours, 48, 72 hours.
And in worst cases, I mean, maybe in someone that's metabolically deranged, 1 to 2 weeks, right? Because in the rodents, I think we've seen like 2 weeks, but I think it's faster in humans. I think the rodents adapt faster, but then take longer to kind of revert back. Well,
in humans, we know, and I mean, I used to do a ketogenic diet when I was strict carnivore. I don't do that in any way, shape, or form now. And we see this in some pregnant women when they fast overnight for an oral glucose tolerance test. Like some degree of physiologic insulin resistance develops pretty quickly when we avoid carbohydrates, and that means that if you have been doing keto for days or weeks or months or years, and you try and eat a piece of fruit, your body's not going to know what to do with it for a couple of days.
Yeah, it's efficiency, actually.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing. It just means give your body time. And I think, unfortunately, in the ketogenic communities, people get fearful of that, and they misinterpret the way they feel when they eat a strawberry or a banana or 5 strawberries and 2 bananas as, oh, this is bad for me, when it's, you've mothballed all of your all of your carbohydrate metabolism in your cells, and you need to bring that back into the forefront. Give your body time, it'll be fine. And I'll just say this quickly, that I think that ketogenic diets have their time and their place, but that long term, I think that they do elevate stress hormones in humans, whether it's cortisol or glucagon or epinephrine. We know that glucagon does not, normalize in someone on a long-term ketogenic diet the way that cortisol or epinephrine might. And glucagon is in many ways a stress hormone. And I've said this before, but I haven't heard enough people talking about it. There are studies in Atkins dieters and people who were doing zero carb or low carb that showed like at least 1.6 to 2.1 times increases in an advanced glycation end product called methylglyoxal. And so I don't understand how we're getting around this in ketogenic communities and people aren't talking about the fact that people want to look at fruit and say that's increasing advanced glycation end products, which isn't supported by the literature. And they're ignoring the fact that ketogenic diets increase advanced glycation end products associated with bad outcomes in humans. And so again, I think there's a time and a place for moderation and discipline with food. And for some people, limiting carbohydrates is very valuable. But I also think that if you look at the literature, ketogenic diets are not without potential downfalls.
Yeah. And I encourage people that, are following a ketogenic diet to try it out. Try adding carbs in a healthy,
gradual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, in a whole food form, right? So
yeah.
I typically recommend, fruit. I'll recommend, some tubers, like maybe some sweet potatoes, things like that. Like start small, don't go ham. And I think that kind of end on this because we got to wrap, but that's where people run into issues is they go on keto. Then when they do go back to the well for a couple of carbohydrates, it's not like they're having a half a sweet potato and an apple. You and I both know they're not, right? So
right.
I've never encountered someone that has been doing keto responsibly, that has had fruit, knocked themselves out of keto and said, oh my gosh, I feel terrible from eating that fruit. I have had people say that when they say, oh yeah, like I went out and had pizza and beer last night. That's a completely different ballgame, right? And they just might associate pizza and beer as carbohydrate without thinking that's pizza and beer,
different effects on the gut.
Absolutely.
Lipopolysaccharide, et cetera. And I'll just mention this because I know there'll be people in the comments saying, when I eat carbohydrates, I just crave them and I think about them. And that might be because your body appreciates the carbohydrates in some ways. I think a lot of people do keto because they feel like they are imprisoned by food, or they don't want to be beholden to food. They don't want to have food cravings. And so when they go back to fruit or honey, they're thinking about these things more and they don't like that. And I get the psychology behind that, but there's probably a reason there too, that perhaps if you eat strawberries and you think about fruit, your body is saying, can we get some more of that, please? Because that's giving your body a signal of abundance. So people need to navigate this however they choose to and whatever works for them and allows them to create the most healthy diet. But I do think that if you understand that physiologic insulin resistance resolves over time, and you also understand that the reason you're craving these things might be because your body actually likes them and is doing positive things, you can reframe it. And there is physiology to support that. People don't have such a demonization of these things in their diets, which limits them also.
For sure, man. Well, Paul, where can everyone find you, brother?
Paul Saladino, MD on all the socials.
Makes it easy.
Thanks,
all right,
brother.
Thanks, brother.